Hello, all my little Spartans out there in the digital world, coming to you from my digital cell. This is Sparta! Alright, so we're actually going to be talking about Sparta in this episode. We're going to be looking and seeing about the Greek city state of Sparta. By this point, you know that Greece formed in city states because of the way Greece was set up. It had a lot of islands, a lot of mountainous area that really kept a lot of the Greece from being united, and they set up in these self-containing cities that ran their own government and the area around it. And one of the most predominant ones in Greece was Sparta, the other being Athens, and we'll talk about those, especially as we get on into the Peloponnesian Wars. Um, Sparta, it was founded by the Dorians. They moved down, wound up conquering this area, this area known as the Peloponnesians. Um, Sparta did not colonize; they were not a colonizing city-state. However, they did conquer their neighbors and take over the area around it. They had slaves. They had captive workers who did a lot of the basic day-to-day stuff like farming and all that kind of part. And they were known as helots. Okay, and they were helots. And the Spartans were always afraid that the helots were going to revolt, that they were going to rise up and have a helot rebellion. And this led the Spartans. Does anybody know? Think about it. What did this lead the Spartans to do? If you were constantly afraid that your slaves were going to revolt, well, it led them to be a militaristic government, a militaristic state, that they were always prepared for war. You can look right here. Here is Sparta. I mentioned the Peloponnesian Wars. So here's Athens, which we'll talk about it in the next video. Here's Sparta. So you can see there's quite some distance and some, there's mountainous areas through here, a lot of water. And you can really see how everything's broken up. And whenever you get into the Peloponnesian War, you can see that, here's Spartan and its allies in the purple, whereas in the orangish color is the Athenian League, and that stuff we'll get into a little later on. But right now we're going to focus in on this one, Sparta. In the army now, okay, they started training their boys at a very young age. Okay, they were always ready for war. They were strong, tough, and vicious. At 7 years old, imagine when you were 7 years old, you went and lived in the military barracks, and you started training. You started learning how to fight, how to use weapons, how to survive. You basically all you did every day was work out and train. Okay? By the time they were 20 years old, they joined the regular army. So they were ready to fight. So from 7 to 20, they were preparing to join the army. At 20, they joined the army. Imagine how tough of a soldier they would be after 13 years of training. Think those in our military don't even get that much training. Um, then from 20 to 30, they live in the military barracks. At 30 years old, they're allowed to move to a home, okay? Now, they could even be married prior to this 30 years old. Um, and if they had their wife would have to live uh, in their home while they still lived in the barracks. But by 30, they could move in and live there. But they remained in the army for another 30 years until they're 60 years old. So these Spartans were tough, okay? And even at 60, I don't know if I would want to face down a Spartan. They had this win or die attitude, okay? Spartans never surrendered. There was a Spartan saying that said, "Come home carrying your shield or being carried on it." Okay, so you should never, and if you were going to flee from battle, you would drop your shield so that you could run and get away. Okay, because you can see how large Spartan shields were. Okay, um, that you were to come home carrying that shield, or that you should die in battle and they carry you back on it. It was a great honor in the Spartan society that you die in battle. Think of them, if you're a Star Trek fan, as the Klingons of the Greek world. You know, today is a good day to die. So these dudes were tough. They're like the Scrappy Doo of the Greek world. Um, and I don't know, I don't guess I mentioned it here, but I love there's a quote in the movie 300 is based on Spartans. Now, is it all 100% true? No, but it gives you an idea of how tough the Spartans were. And I love there's a quote in there, and it actually is a quote that's used. Uh, but it says, the Persians are talking about how their armies are known to shoot arrows to darken out the sky. And the Spartan says, well, good, we'll fight in the shade. So, they weren't afraid of anything. They were tough, strong, real sure of themselves because they could back it up. Spartan women were tough too. A Spartan woman probably kicked my tail. They trained in sports and they stayed very fit. Um, if you saw some of the other videos I've sent out to you, you got to see like the wife swap between the Spartan and the Athenian woman, and you got to see how tough that Spartan woman is. They stayed very fit. They lived at homes while the husbands lived in the barracks. And in Sparta, women actually had rights because they were tough. They could own property. They could go where they wanted. They didn't have to have their husbands to take them out or let them out and go with them. They could go where they wanted because they could take care of themselves. They could own property. They even had other various rights. Spartan government. There was an oligarchy. It was a government ran by a few people or a smaller dominant class. That's what an oligarchy is. Okay. They had two kings. And then they had the Council of Elders. It was 28 citizens that were over 60. So they've already gotten out of the military. They've done their military service from 7 to 60. And now they become part of the Council of Elders. Because it believes that they've lived this long, they have been able to survive, and they have gained all this wise or all this wisdom. Um, and they create laws and present them to the assembly. And then the assembly approves them. And the assembly is all Spartan men 30 and up. Okay, so once you make it out of the barracks, you then become part of the assembly. They also had ephors, which were five that were chosen to enforce laws and collect taxes. Okay, it was five men who were chosen to enforce laws and collect taxes. Spartan diplomacy. Pretty much, they discouraged foreign visitors. Hey, we don't want you here. If you're not a Spartan, vamoose, get out of here. And they really discouraged people, Spartans, traveling abroad. If we're not going somewhere to conquer it, we don't really need to go there. Stay here. Let's train to be tough, bad mojos, and let's not worry about the rest of the world. You know, if Athens thinks they're so much better, let them bring it on. We'll kick their tails. And there was some kind of hostility between Athens and Spartan because they were the two leading factions of Greece. There was no other city-states in Greece that were quite as dominant as Sparta and Athens, and we'll kind of see how this plays out in various things that happened to Greece along the way, culminating in the Peloponnesian Wars. All right, so remember, this is Sparta, and until next time, deuces!